Someone was shocked by your unexpected strength. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. There are moments in life when people think they know exactly who you are. They look at your quiet nature and mistake it for weakness. They see your kindness and assume you will always accept being overlooked. They watch you remain calm during difficult situations and imagine you simply don't notice what is happening around you. But sometimes the greatest surprise isn't that circumstances change. It's that a person discovers a strength no one else ever expected them to have. This is a fictional inspirational story about resilience, hope, and personal growth. If it encourages you, carry its lessons with you and leave behind anything that doesn't speak to your own journey. Somewhere today, someone found themselves completely surprised. Not because you became someone different overnight, but because they finally saw the strength that had been quietly growing inside you all along. For a long time, your journey seemed ordinary to everyone watching from the outside. They saw the routines, the responsibilities, the daily challenges, and assumed that was the whole story. What they never saw were the silent battles you fought when no one was looking. They never witnessed the mornings when getting out of bed required more courage than anyone could imagine. They never heard the prayers whispered during lonely nights when hope felt distant. They never knew how many times you wanted to give up but chose to take one more step instead. The strongest people often carry their greatest battles quietly. They don't announce every struggle. They don't ask for applause every time they overcome another obstacle. They simply keep moving forward, one faithful step at a time. That quiet perseverance became the very thing no one expected. Have you ever noticed how people often judge strength by appearances? They assume the loudest person is the bravest. They believe confidence always speaks with a powerful voice. Yet life has a different way of revealing true character. Real strength often looks like remaining kind when bitterness would feel easier. It looks like choosing patience while everything around you demands immediate reactions. It looks like continuing to hope after disappointment has visited your life more than once. Those victories rarely make headlines, but they shape the foundation of an extraordinary life. Every unseen decision to keep believing, to keep forgiving, and to keep growing becomes another layer of strength that no circumstance can easily remove. Meanwhile, there were people who quietly underestimated you. They assumed your silence meant uncertainty. They believed your humility meant you lacked confidence. They mistook your willingness to listen for an inability to lead. Without realizing it, they created an image of you based only on what they wanted to see. They never stopped to consider that some of the strongest hearts don't need to prove themselves every day. Like a mountain standing through every season, true strength doesn't spend its energy convincing others that it exists. It simply remains steady through storms until everyone eventually notices. Your heart needs this reminder today because there may have been seasons when even you forgot how strong you had become. Growth often happens so gradually that we fail to recognize it while it's taking place. One day you suddenly realize that situations which once overwhelmed you no longer steal your peace. Conversations that once filled you with anxiety now feel manageable. Opinions that once controlled your confidence no longer carry the same weight. These are signs that something powerful has been changing inside you. Strength isn't always about becoming harder. Sometimes it's about becoming calmer. Sometimes it's about learning that your peace is more valuable than winning every argument. The fictional story continues with someone watching from a distance. They expected you to react exactly as you always had before. They believed one more setback would finally convince you to quit. They assumed another disappointment would leave you discouraged for weeks. But when the challenge arrived, something unexpected happened. Instead of falling apart, you responded with quiet confidence. Instead of becoming angry, you remained thoughtful. Instead of seeking revenge, you chose dignity. That response confused them because it didn't match the version of you they had created in their own mind. For the first time, they realized they had misunderstood your character completely. There is something remarkable about people who have endured difficult seasons with grace. Hardship teaches lessons that comfort never can. It reveals priorities. It strengthens patience. It develops compassion for others walking through similar valleys. Every challenge you've faced has left behind more than painful memories. It has also left behind wisdom. That wisdom now guides your decisions in ways that younger versions of yourself could never have imagined. Looking back, you may wish certain hardships had never happened, yet you cannot deny the person they helped you become. Sometimes our greatest teachers arrive disguised as our greatest struggles. Imagine a tree standing through years of changing weather. Each storm bends its branches but also strengthens its roots. From the outside, people notice only the leaves and the trunk. They don't see what is happening beneath the surface. The roots grow deeper after every difficult season. In much the same way, every challenge you've faced has been quietly strengthening your foundation. While others focused only on visible circumstances, unseen resilience continued developing beneath the surface. That hidden growth became the reason you could stand firm when new storms appeared. The person in this fictional story begins replaying every interaction they ever had with you. They remember moments when they dismissed your ideas too quickly. They recall conversations where they assumed they understood your limits. Now those memories feel different because today's events have forced them to reconsider everything they believed. They realize they confused gentleness with weakness, humility with insecurity, and patience with passivity. That realization becomes uncomfortable because it exposes how easily appearances can deceive us. Don't scroll because this next reminder may be exactly what your heart needs. Never underestimate the power of quiet consistency. Dramatic moments often capture attention, but consistent daily choices shape destiny. Every morning you chose hope over despair. Every afternoon you completed responsibilities despite exhaustion. Every evening you continued believing tomorrow could be better than today. Those decisions may have seemed small at the time, but together they created remarkable resilience. Extraordinary lives are rarely built through one spectacular moment. They are built through ordinary faithfulness repeated again and again. As the day unfolds, the fictional observer recognizes something even more surprising. Your strength was never meant to defeat other people. It was meant to inspire them. Watching you remain compassionate despite adversity begins changing something inside their own heart. They realize that real influence does not come from controlling others. It comes from living with integrity so consistently that people naturally begin questioning their own assumptions. Your example speaks more loudly than endless explanations ever could. Perhaps this story reminds you of your own life. Maybe you've spent years wondering whether your quiet efforts mattered. Maybe you've questioned whether anyone noticed the progress you fought so hard to make. Whether people recognized it or not, your growth has always mattered. Every healthy habit you developed, every difficult conversation you handled with maturity, every moment you chose forgiveness instead of resentment has been shaping a stronger version of yourself. Those victories belong to you regardless of whether anyone applauds them. As evening approaches in this fictional story, the person who underestimated you quietly walks away carrying an entirely different perspective. They expected to witness someone defeated by life's challenges. Instead, they witnessed someone transformed by them. They leave realizing that true strength often grows unnoticed until the exact moment it is needed. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise of all. The strength that shocked everyone else did not appear suddenly today. It had been growing through every tear, every setback, every unanswered question, and every faithful decision you made when nobody else was watching. Today's moment simply revealed what had been true all along. Resilience developed in private eventually becomes impossible to hide in public, and a heart strengthened by perseverance carries a quiet confidence that no challenge can easily shake. Don't scroll, because this is where the story begins, revealing why your strength surprised everyone around you. The fictional observer leaves that first encounter unable to stop thinking about what they witnessed. They expected frustration, but they saw composure. They expected you to defend yourself with anger, but instead you answered with calm confidence. They expected you to break under pressure because that was the version of you they had created in their own imagination. Instead, they walked away questioning everything they believed. This is a fictional inspirational story about resilience, hope, and personal growth. If it speaks to your heart, let it encourage you to recognize the quiet strength that often grows through life's hardest seasons. What shocked them wasn't that you had become louder. It was that you had become steadier. They realized there is a kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself because it has already survived too much to seek validation from every opinion. Have you ever noticed how some of life's greatest transformations happen so gradually that even the person experiencing them barely recognizes the change? One day you suddenly realize that situations which once ruined your entire week now occupy only a few moments of your attention. Conversations that once left you questioning your worth no longer carry the same weight. You begin responding instead of reacting. You begin listening instead of defending. You discover that peace has become more valuable than always being understood. These changes rarely happen overnight. They are built through hundreds of quiet decisions that nobody else ever notices. Every time you choose patience instead of panic, kindness instead of resentment, or wisdom instead of impulse, something inside grows stronger. The fictional observer begins replaying memories from months earlier. They remember moments when they assumed your silence meant fear. They remember times when they interpreted your humility as uncertainty. Looking back now, those memories feel completely different. They realize you were never silent because you lacked confidence. You were silent because you had learned that not every misunderstanding deserves an argument. Not every criticism deserves an answer. Some battles become victories the moment you refuse to let them steal your peace. That realization unsettles them because it exposes how easily appearances can deceive. The strongest people are often those who no longer feel the need to convince everyone else that they are strong. Meanwhile, your own journey has continued shaping you in ways few people understand. Perhaps there was a season when every opinion deeply affected you. Maybe you replayed conversations over and over, wondering if you had said the wrong thing or made the wrong decision. But life became a patient teacher. Through disappointments, unexpected detours, and moments of uncertainty, you slowly discovered something liberating. Your identity could not be built on changing opinions because opinions change too easily. Real confidence grows from living according to your values even when recognition never comes. Once that lesson takes root, criticism loses much of its power. Praise also becomes less controlling because your peace no longer depends upon constant approval. Don't skip this next reminder because your heart may need it today. Imagine a lighthouse standing beside the ocean. It does not chase every ship. It does not argue with every wave. It simply continues shining regardless of the weather. Storms may strike. Winds may roar. Yet the light continues doing what it was created to do. In many ways, emotional maturity resembles that lighthouse. It is not distracted by every passing storm. It remains faithful to its purpose. That kind of steadiness is far more powerful than dramatic displays of strength because it creates security not only for yourself but also for everyone around you. The fictional observer notices another unexpected change. They begin watching how other people respond to you. Instead of finding someone constantly trying to impress others, they find someone willing to encourage quietly, listen attentively, and celebrate other people's successes without needing attention in return. At first they assume this must be an act. But as days pass, they realize consistency cannot be easily imitated. Anyone can pretend to be kind for an afternoon. Few people remain gracious through disappointment, pressure, and misunderstanding. Your consistency becomes the evidence that your character has genuinely changed. There is another lesson hidden beneath this story. Hardship often gives people two choices. It can harden the heart, or it can deepen it. Some become bitter because of what they endured. Others become compassionate because they remember exactly what pain feels like. The difference is not found in the difficulty itself but in the response chosen afterward. Every challenge places a question before us: will this experience close your heart or expand it? Your fictional journey reminds us that resilience is not simply surviving hardship. True resilience is allowing hardship to produce wisdom instead of resentment. As another day unfolds, the fictional observer overhears someone speaking about you. They expect criticism. Instead, they hear respect. One person mentions your reliability. Another speaks about your kindness during difficult circumstances. Someone else describes the quiet confidence that has become noticeable over time. Listening to these conversations, the observer realizes something surprising. Your influence was never created through dramatic speeches. It grew through ordinary actions repeated faithfully day after day. Integrity has a remarkable way of speaking long after words have been forgotten. Perhaps you have underestimated the impact of your own quiet faithfulness. Every time you chose honesty when dishonesty seemed easier, someone noticed. Every time you remained patient while others reacted impulsively, someone learned from your example. Every time you admitted a mistake instead of hiding it, someone saw humility in action. We often imagine influence arriving through extraordinary moments, but more often it develops through consistent character. People remember how they felt around someone who made them feel safe, respected, and understood. The fictional observer finally understands why they were so shocked. They had been measuring strength according to appearances instead of character. They expected confidence to be loud, yet yours became quieter as it matured. They expected power to control others, yet yours focused on mastering yourself. They expected resilience to eliminate every struggle, yet yours allowed you to keep moving forward despite uncertainty. Their entire definition of strength begins changing because of what they have witnessed. As evening arrives, the observer catches one final glimpse of you walking away after another ordinary day. Nothing dramatic has happened. There has been no public recognition, no applause, and no extraordinary celebration. Yet something about the way you carry yourself communicates peace. Not the peace of someone whose life has always been easy, but the peace of someone who has learned they no longer need every answer before taking the next step. That quiet confidence cannot be manufactured. It is earned through seasons of perseverance that few people ever fully understand. Before the day ends, the observer whispers a simple thought to themselves. I was wrong. Those 3 words become the beginning of their own transformation. Sometimes the greatest gift our strength offers is not proving others wrong but inspiring them to grow beyond their own assumptions. Real strength invites reflection rather than intimidation. It encourages hope rather than fear. It reminds everyone watching that ordinary people can become extraordinarily resilient simply by refusing to stop growing. And perhaps that is the deepest truth hidden within this fictional story. The strength that surprised everyone else was never created in a single moment of triumph. It was built quietly through every setback that taught patience, every disappointment that developed wisdom, every lonely season that strengthened faith, and every difficult decision where you chose integrity over convenience. Those invisible victories became the foundation of visible confidence. The world simply noticed what your heart had been building for a very long time. Sometimes the strongest people are not those who never fall. They are the ones who rise each time with greater compassion, deeper wisdom, and a quieter confidence than before. That kind of strength does more than overcome challenges. It becomes a light that helps others believe they can overcome their own. Don't scroll, because this is the moment when the true reason behind your unexpected strength begins to unfold. The fictional observer thought they had already learned everything there was to know after watching you remain calm under pressure, but they were mistaken. Over the following days, they continued noticing something they couldn't explain. Every challenge that appeared in your path seemed to reveal another layer of resilience. It wasn't that life suddenly became easier for you. Difficult conversations still happened. Unexpected disappointments still arrived. Plans still changed without warning. The difference was that you no longer allowed those moments to determine the direction of your entire day. This is a fictional inspirational story about resilience, hope, and personal growth. If it encourages you, let it remind you that true strength is not the absence of hardship. It is the ability to keep choosing wisdom, kindness, and hope even when hardship remains part of the journey. The fictional observer remembers the version of you they believed they understood. They recall someone who questioned every decision, someone who seemed afraid of making mistakes, someone who often sought reassurance before taking even the smallest step. Looking at you now, they struggle to connect that memory with the person standing before them. You still speak gently. You still treat people with respect. Yet there is a steadiness that did not exist before. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has learned that perfection is impossible but growth is always available. That realization changes the way they see you. They understand that confidence does not always arrive through dramatic success. Sometimes it is born through surviving disappointment without losing hope. Have you ever noticed that the strongest people often become the most compassionate? It would seem easier for hardship to create bitterness, yet many people discover the opposite. They remember what loneliness felt like, so they notice the person sitting quietly by themselves. They remember the pain of being misunderstood, so they listen more carefully before forming opinions about others. They remember waiting for encouragement, so they become generous with their own words of kindness. Pain handled with wisdom often becomes compassion. That transformation is one of the greatest victories a heart can experience because it turns yesterday's wounds into tomorrow's source of encouragement for someone else. Meanwhile, your own life continues moving forward one ordinary day at a time. Perhaps nothing around you feels especially dramatic. You still wake up with responsibilities waiting. There are tasks to complete, conversations to have, and decisions to make. Yet beneath those ordinary routines, something extraordinary has been taking place. You no longer measure your progress only by visible achievements. Instead, you notice quieter victories. You recover from disappointment more quickly than you once did. You no longer replay every criticism for hours. You find yourself choosing gratitude in situations where frustration once felt automatic. These changes may seem small, but together they reveal remarkable growth. The strongest foundations are always built one stone at a time. The fictional observer notices another moment that leaves them speechless. Someone speaks unfairly about you in a public setting. They expect you to react defensively. They prepare themselves for an argument or an emotional response. Instead, you answer with calm honesty. You refuse to insult anyone. You clarify what needs to be clarified, then continue with your day without carrying resentment into every future conversation. Watching this unfold, the observer realizes something important. Emotional maturity is not about never feeling hurt. It is about refusing to let hurt become the author of every future decision. That lesson stays with them long after the conversation ends. Don't skip this next reminder because your heart may need to hear it today. Imagine a river flowing around rocks instead of trying to destroy them. The river continues moving forward because it understands that progress is more important than proving its strength against every obstacle. In many ways, resilience works the same way. It does not waste energy fighting every unnecessary battle. It learns when to speak, when to remain silent, when to hold on, and when to let go. Wisdom is not found in constant resistance. Wisdom is found in recognizing which paths lead toward peace and which only create exhaustion. As another week passes in the fictional story, the observer begins noticing how other people naturally seek your advice. At first they assume it is coincidence. But the pattern continues. Friends ask for guidance during difficult moments. Colleagues trust your judgment. Family members feel safe sharing concerns they rarely discuss with anyone else. None of this happened because you demanded respect. It happened because your consistency quietly earned it. People are drawn toward those whose actions match their words. Reliability becomes one of the strongest forms of influence because it creates trust over time. There is another lesson hidden beneath these events. Many people spend years chasing recognition while overlooking character. They believe success alone will bring fulfillment. Yet recognition without integrity quickly fades. Character, however, continues growing even when nobody is watching. Every honest decision strengthens it. Every act of patience deepens it. Every moment of humility protects it. Long after applause disappears, character remains. That is why life's greatest investment is never simply what you accomplish. It is who you become while accomplishing it. Perhaps you've spent too much time believing your quiet efforts have gone unnoticed. But this fictional story reminds us that invisible growth often becomes visible at exactly the right moment. Think about the sunrise. It does not appear instantly. Darkness slowly gives way to light until one moment everyone realizes morning has arrived. Personal transformation follows a similar pattern. Day after day, nothing appears dramatically different. Then suddenly people begin saying, "You've changed." In reality, the change was happening all along. They simply noticed it later. The observer eventually gathers the courage to ask you a simple question. How did you become so strong? They expect a complicated answer filled with extraordinary experiences. Instead, you smile and say something surprisingly ordinary. You explain that strength did not arrive all at once. It grew every time you refused to quit after disappointment. It grew every time you chose forgiveness over resentment. It grew every time you admitted a mistake instead of pretending to have all the answers. It grew every time you kept moving forward even when progress felt invisible. The observer listens quietly because they realize they have been searching for dramatic secrets while overlooking the quiet power of consistent choices. Your heart needs this reminder today. Never underestimate the value of ordinary faithfulness. Every healthy habit you continue practicing matters. Every kind word you speak matters. Every difficult conversation you approach with honesty matters. Every moment you choose hope instead of cynicism shapes the future more than you realize. Great lives are not usually built through one extraordinary day. They are built through thousands of ordinary days lived with extraordinary integrity. As evening settles once again, the fictional observer reflects on everything they have witnessed. They no longer admire your strength simply because you overcame difficult situations. They admire it because your strength never robbed you of your kindness. You remained compassionate without becoming naive. You remained confident without becoming arrogant. You remained humble without becoming insecure. That balance is rare because it can only be developed through years of intentional growth. And perhaps that is the greatest surprise hidden within this fictional journey. The strength that shocked everyone around you was never about appearing invincible. It was about becoming authentic. Authentic people no longer waste energy pretending to be perfect. They acknowledge weaknesses, learn from failures, celebrate progress, and continue growing with quiet determination. That authenticity becomes contagious. It reminds everyone watching that resilience is not reserved for extraordinary individuals. It is available to anyone willing to keep taking one faithful step after another. The person who once underestimated you now walks away carrying more than admiration. They carry hope, because they have discovered that if ordinary choices can transform one life so completely, perhaps they can begin transforming their own as well. Don't scroll, because this is where the story reveals its deepest truth. The fictional observer has spent days watching your quiet resilience, trying to understand what made you so different from the person they believed they knew. They expected to discover a secret moment that changed everything overnight. Instead, they found something far more powerful. This is a fictional inspirational story about resilience, hope, and personal growth. If it encourages you, let it remind you that lasting strength is built through countless ordinary choices made with courage and integrity. The observer finally understands that your strength was never created in one dramatic event. It was shaped through every season when no one noticed your perseverance. It grew each time you chose to stand back up after disappointment instead of surrendering to discouragement. It matured every time life gave you a reason to become bitter, yet you chose compassion instead. The person they underestimated no longer exists. In their place stands someone who has been quietly transformed by every lesson life has placed along the path. As another morning begins, the observer notices something that once seemed impossible. You smile. Not because every problem has disappeared, but because your peace no longer depends upon perfect circumstances. There are still unanswered questions. There are still dreams waiting to unfold. There are still responsibilities that sometimes feel overwhelming. Yet none of those realities steal the calm that now lives inside you. That peace surprises them more than anything else. They realize peace is not something that arrives after every struggle ends. Peace is something a person learns to carry through the middle of uncertainty. That discovery changes the observer's understanding of strength forever. Have you ever looked back at your own life and realized that your greatest victories were almost invisible? They were not trophies displayed for everyone to admire. They were private moments when you chose to keep believing after another disappointment. They were mornings when you got out of bed despite feeling emotionally exhausted. They were conversations where you responded with kindness even though anger would have been easier. They were evenings when you forgave someone who never asked for forgiveness because you refused to carry bitterness into another tomorrow. Those victories may have appeared small while they were happening, but together they built a foundation that no storm could easily shake. The fictional observer begins remembering every time they misjudged you. They assumed silence meant weakness. They believed humility meant insecurity. They thought patience meant hesitation. Now they understand that what looked like weakness was actually remarkable self-control. What appeared to be uncertainty was thoughtful wisdom. What seemed like passivity was quiet confidence. Sometimes people only recognize strength after it has been tested. Gold does not prove its value until it passes through fire. Trees do not reveal the depth of their roots until storms arrive. In the same way, your character became visible when life demanded more from you than comfort ever could. Meanwhile, your own journey continues one faithful step at a time. You may still have moments when doubt quietly whispers old fears into your thoughts. That happens to everyone. The difference now is that those whispers no longer control your decisions. You have learned to pause before reacting. You have learned to ask whether fear is speaking or whether wisdom is leading. That pause has become one of your greatest strengths. Emotional maturity is often found in the space between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. Don't skip this next reminder because your heart may need it today. Imagine an old bridge stretching across a wide river. Thousands of people cross it every year without thinking about the years of careful work that made it strong enough to carry them safely. They notice the destination but rarely think about the unseen foundation beneath their feet. Your life has become much like that bridge. People now admire your confidence, your kindness, and your resilience, but few understand the years of unseen growth that made those qualities possible. Every difficult season added another beam. Every disappointment strengthened another support. Every lesson reinforced another part of your character until you became capable of carrying responsibilities that once would have felt impossible. The fictional observer notices that your influence has begun reaching people you never intended to impress. A coworker starts approaching challenges with greater patience after watching your example. A friend begins believing in themselves because they have seen how much you have grown. A family member becomes more willing to communicate honestly because your calmness has created a safe place for difficult conversations. None of this happens because you seek attention. It happens because authentic character naturally inspires others. Real influence is rarely forced. It grows quietly through consistency until people begin changing simply because they have spent time around someone living with integrity. There is another lesson quietly unfolding beneath this story. Strength is not measured by how much weight you can carry alone. Sometimes the strongest people are those who know when to ask for help, when to rest, and when to admit they do not have every answer. Pride often isolates people. Humility connects them. You discovered that growth became easier the moment you stopped pretending to be perfect. Instead of hiding your weaknesses, you began learning from them. Instead of fearing mistakes, you started treating them as teachers. That mindset transformed failure from an ending into a beginning. Perhaps someone reading this fictional story has spent years believing they are not strong enough. Maybe you compare yourself to people who appear more successful, more confident, or more accomplished. But comparison rarely tells the whole story. Every person carries hidden battles. Every life contains chapters the world never sees. Your progress should never be measured against someone else's timeline. The only meaningful comparison is between who you were yesterday and who you are becoming today. If today you are a little more patient, a little more hopeful, and a little more courageous than before, then you are already growing in remarkable ways. As sunset paints the sky with warm colors, the observer quietly thanks life for allowing them to witness your transformation. They realize that the greatest lesson was never about you alone. It was about discovering that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary resilience when they continue choosing growth over surrender. Watching your journey has challenged them to examine their own habits, their own fears, and their own excuses. Your quiet example has become the invitation they needed to begin changing their own life. Before the day comes to an end, you pause for a moment of reflection. Looking back, you no longer wish every difficult chapter had been removed from your story. You would never choose those painful experiences again, but you recognize the wisdom they produced. They taught you empathy when success alone might have created pride. They taught you patience when comfort might have created complacency. They taught you gratitude for ordinary moments that once passed unnoticed. Most importantly, they taught you that your greatest source of confidence was never perfection. It was perseverance. And that is where this fictional story finds its true ending. The person who was shocked by your unexpected strength now understands what they could not see before. Your resilience did not appear overnight. It was built through every unseen act of courage, every quiet decision to forgive, every morning you chose hope over despair, and every evening you refused to let disappointment have the final word. The strength that amazed everyone else was simply the visible result of years of invisible growth. As you continue moving forward, remember this lesson. You do not need to prove your worth through loud words or dramatic gestures. Continue living with honesty. Continue choosing kindness when it is difficult. Continue standing firm in your values when circumstances become uncertain. Over time, your life itself will become the strongest testimony of all. Long after people forget individual conversations, they will remember how your resilience made them believe that they, too, could rise above their own struggles. Sometimes the greatest legacy a person leaves is not found in extraordinary achievements but in the quiet example of a life lived with courage, compassion, and unwavering hope.